welcome to those of you who have tuned in to this latest installment of Reality Decoded, brought to you as always by Shit Video Productions. I don't know why there was a little glitch there where it jumped to the camera before my little thumbnail, but this evening's feature presentation that we do have in store is called Silent Warfare. We are going to be looking a little bit at some technology and methods and organizations that are using silent weaponry to influence the minds of the masses and manipulate behavioral patterns into their desired patterns or desired directions, should I say. Now, this is actually the third attempt that I've tried this week to stream this evening's presentation on Silent Warfare. I did try to stream, I think, Tuesday or Thursday evening, can't remember which one it is, with a very poor return of viewership, and I did actually put it before that up as an upload, which after sort of 24 hours had very little views and almost zero interactions in the comment. And part of the sort of endeavors of Shit Video Productions in putting together these feature presentations is in the hopes and attempts and a vain attempt to try and share some of the information that I look into and find interesting and research sometimes at a great length with other people that may find it as interesting as I do, which doesn't seem to be the case in the last week or so since I have sort of rebooted Reality Decoded and tried to get myself a little bit into the practice and swing of things of streaming, as I have had a little bit of an absence from my YouTube activities in the last year to sort of 15-16 months coming on now. But it is a new year and I do have a sort of intentions to try and reboot and restore a little bit of regularity to this channel that did once see a very small and thriving community tuning in regularly, and not the case so far this evening, with the viewer count standing at a whopping 1. So without anyone really to continue any pleasantries with, I guess the best thing to do is pull up the presentation, press play, turn off the camera mic, and who knows, somebody may tune in before the end of the proceedings this evening. Now, I do understand that sometimes with live streams they're not as appealing in the rerun if you aren't part of the sort of chat or in the community that is watching as it happens, and do sometimes feel that the information is sort of lost once the stream has ended. And as I sort of mentioned a few moments ago, that I do sort of aim to try and get as many people as possible to watch these streams, otherwise there's little to no point me actually wasting my time putting together presentations if nobody is getting to tune in. And you know, one way or another, I'm trying to find out how I can sort of reach the mass amount of audience that this channel is capable with, which isn't exactly very many, and I'm not exactly looking to go viral. But it does seem to me, if I put a video up as an upload, it doesn't matter how short or how long it is, it gets almost zero response or interactions in the comment. And judging by the analytics in the YouTube studio, the attention retention span is around about 3% of the people that watch it actually see the videos to the end, with a whopping 87% of people tuning out before 3 minutes has passed. But it does seem to me that the better way for me to get across the information that I am trying to share to the most amount of people is to put it in a live stream, and that has sort of been tried and tested on this channel as the better way to go, rather than sort of wasting my time with uploads, because they don't seem to get watched or really, as I said, get much response response on it. But the purpose of sometimes, I think, putting uploads up rather than live streams is that they sort of have a little bit of durability and last a little bit longer in the time frame. An example, the Psylent green Decoded upload that I put a few months ago, within the sort of first 3 months of uploading, it only had about 60 or so views, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it went absolutely ballistic. By my standards, and is at close to 2.3 thousand views, but it was getting around 30, 40, sometimes 60 views a day, and that's just an example sometimes how uploads can tend to resurface, which is not always the case with live streams. But as it's gone up to 2 people at the moment, maybe I do have somebody watching. If you are there, don't be shy, say hello, let me know who you are, if you are an actual person and not just an artificial intelligent bot sent to see over this proceeding. So I am going to turn off the microphone. Oh, it's you, Maiden, good to see you. There is going to be a video in a second. Seeing as nobody is watching, I haven't activated the camera, Maiden. I am about to press play for the feature presentation. As I said, there's no one really watching to continue the pleasantries any longer, and I was sort of dragging out with a little bit of monologue, hoping that maybe someone might tune in, you know, and I do my best to notify you, because I know YouTube won't do it. I do share the links to Facebook, Twitter, and to the Discord, but I can't exactly go around and drag people by the scruff of the neck and force them to watch. It is a choice, and thank you for tuning to keep me company for the time being, Maiden, and feel free to work, lurk, cook, lurk, or lurk around in whichever way you choose, as long as I'm on in the background there. But as I said, I am about to press play, seeing as there's nobody else around, but it is good to see you. At least I've got one wench watching for moral support. So as I said, let's take off the microphone and camera and press play.
Was a science fiction movie about a device which electronically injected thoughts into the human mind. In this scene, the mind control machine projects images into the brain of the chief scientist through an electrode headset. The scientist then finds himself experiencing the thoughts of a wild truck ride. But even in this futuristic Hollywood tale, the subject still had to be connected to the machine by an electrode headset.
That's remarkable.
But not as remarkable as a real-life experiment where I was the subject of a prototype device designed to project images into the mind without electrodes. The prototype machine, developed from Soviet scientific data, could, according to some scientists, have a profound effect as a weapon of war. Electronic mind control research is not new. A scientific milestone in this area came in the 1960s, when Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated remote control over a charging bull. By connecting a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain, Delgado proved that the animal's aggressive impulses could be thwarted by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes.
Do you realize the fantastic possibilities if from the outside we could modify the inside? Could we give messages to the inside? But the beauty is that now we are not using electrodes.
In recent years, Delgado has shown that the behavior of monkeys can be altered using low-power, pulsating magnetic fields. But in these experiments, there were no antenna implants.
Any function in the brain, emotions, intellect, personality, well, could be perhaps modified by this non-invasive technology.
Delgado's research has so far been limited to animals. But in the Soviet Union, a radio frequency, or RF device, has been used for over 30 years to manipulate the moods of mental patients. It's called a LIDA machine. It radiates pulses of radio frequency energy, as well as light, sound, and heat. The pulse rate is in the extremely low frequency range, between 0 and 100 pulses per second. Dr. Ross 80 is the top researcher at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Loma Linda, California. He has been investigating the effects of the LIDA machine.
Now, what do the Soviets use this machine for?
Well, they don't use it anymore. We should be very clear that this is a machine which is regarded by them as somewhat obsolete technologically.
This scientist, who did not want his identity revealed, is employed by the U.S. government and has done secret RF weapons research. He believes that tests done with the LIDA and similar machines prove that humans are susceptible to remote alterations of mood and awareness.
Certain kinds of weak electromagnetic signals work exactly like drugs. And so the promise is that anything you can do with drugs, you could do with the right electromagnetic signals. Apparently, there are specific sites involved, specific functions involved. It's a matter of matching up, just like it is with a pill or a drug, to cause and effect. You could have a cause and effect relationship between a magnetic field and a biological function.
CNN enlisted the help of noted physicist Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher and electrical engineer Bill Van Bice to build and test an RF mine interference machine from data found in Soviet scientific literature. The machine itself was inexpensive and easy to construct, using parts from a consumer electronics store. It emits a weak magnetic field, pulsed at extremely low frequency. As the subject of the test, I was blindfolded, and my ears were blocked to prevent inadvertent clues as to what was happening. A magnetic probe was placed about 18 inches from my head. As the experiment began, 2 signal generators produced waveform patterns that were transmitted by the magnetic probe at about 1/1000th of the Earth's natural magnetic field strength.
Describe anything that you see, if any.
In the control room, Van Bice varied the waveforms being generated. In another room, I could see waveforms changing shape in my mind.
Parabola just went by.
Parabola just went by.
Oh, yeah, I did. I just flipped the switch. Parabola?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, let's see. Let's check this out. That's what happened. I flipped the switch. Okay.
There's a spike right there. Spike.
Right there.
Light spike.
I dramatically changed the generator. I stepped it by 10 right here. And the intermix from the 2 generators was right where you said that you saw a spike.
Van Bice says that when I failed to see any change, it was because he had not set the proper frequency and power levels. Later, I asked Van Bice what a weapon using this technology could do.
Induce basically what would be considered hallucinations in people, direct them to do things against their so-called better judgment.
How easy would it be to assemble a weapon from existing off-the-shelf parts?
In 3 weeks, I could put together a weapon that would take care of a whole town.
We showed the results of our test to Dr. Robert Becker, a 2-time Nobel nominee for his work in the biological effects of electromagnetism.
This is a very significant experiment because it carries our understanding of how vision is actually performed a step further into the mystery.
He said he thought the machine caused a disturbance in the brain's interpretation of vision, and as such could be used as a weapon.
That kind of a disturbance in the visual system could markedly influence the operations of a fighter pilot, a helicopter pilot, or even as simple an aberration in the visual field as making everyone seeing double, or everyone having their visual field jitter like a poorly adjusted television screen. The effect of that upon the efficiency with which an Army, an Air Force, or a Navy would operate would be catastrophic.
More about RF weapons in my next report. Chuck DeCaro, CNN, Special Assignments.
tested our device, we tested GVS in a VR roller coaster experience. You can imagine what a VR roller coaster might feel like. And in this case, it went from a vomit fest to something that people actually found thrilling and exciting. People are like, I want this in my home. I want to do it all the time. And they said that they could feel every turn of the roller coaster in their body, something that they'd expect to feel on a real roller coaster. Another thing we can do in VR, which is what I started to talk about, is remote control people. Basically, how can we steer people using GVS? And if you watch in the video, the person actually intends to walk straight, but they end up turning quite smoothly. And that happens, well, there's a prerequisite for it, that you need to be looking down when you do apply GVS. So if they had been looking up and we had applied GVS, they would have staggered. And that almost feels like somebody's pushing you. That doesn't feel comfortable.
Alrighty guys, welcome to Silent Wars, this latest presentation brought to you at Reality Decoded, and we are going to be looking at some pretty interesting stuff, or at least pretty interesting stuff as far as I see it, concerning some psytronic and psychological technologies and methodologies that are being used as silent weapons for silent warfares. And we did start out this presentation by looking at one of 3 CNN special reports from 1985 that did demonstrate and show what was then, almost 40 years ago, not new technology that could control the minds of individuals. And we have also featured the other 2 parts of that 3-part series on electromagnetic and radio frequency technologies and mind control on previous related presentations here at Reality Decoded, and there are a few also over on TSP TV for your educational and informative purposes. But in recent light, and the announcement of south of the border, what is being referred to as the Havana syndrome, and what is being referred to this side of the border as New Brunswick stroke Canadian brain syndrome, the announcement and the revelation that the United States government has announced and declared that this technology that was once denied in the United States rebukes any knowing or ownership of such technology is being used against, primarily in the United States, diplomats and governmental types, which only kind of fuels and restokes the embers of the Cold War fire. And also something in terms of the Cold War, that the time that those CNN presentation special reports were put out and broadcast, the world was in the midst of a Cold War where the threat of nuclear holocaust did keep an awful lot of people in check and did give a lot of people nightmares and hiding under their covers, thinking that any minute now the 4-minute warning could be arose and you'd have to get to your nearest fallout shelter. And it's also within the fictitious realms of The Watchmen, also said in 1985 that it was amidst the height of a Cold War that was about to reach its climatic conclusion that an industrialist, an extremely wealthy elite industrialists, carried out a hoax, false flag staged alien event upon New York City. And we did just mention The Watchmen in the Alien Report, the last Reality Decoded live stream from this Saturday. So we won't go too much ado and talk about The Watchmen anymore. And I do actually plan to do at some point in the future maybe a director's cut redo of The Watchmen. But we are going to start out looking at an article here from The Guardian that has come out since the announcement of the victims of the Havana syndrome, and the fact that they are suggesting that these victims have been bombarded with, radio frequencies and electromagnetic frequencies that has caused some symptoms from as minor as headaches in stuffiness to sort of heart attacks and full out dementia. And we have looked at the symptoms of electromagnetic frequencies in previous streams related to that topic, but you can kind of see a little decal graphic there, microwave and target, and some sort of beams being transmitted from one end to the other. But this come out, as I said, not long after we heard, it was sort of a couple of weeks after the announcement of the Havana syndrome, and about a week or two also after the announcement of the New Brunswick brain syndrome. And this is all about weapons technology, and this is from a mainstream, as I said, the Guardian outlet, that is now saying microwave weapons that could cause Havana syndrome exist, an expert says. And again, I do not claim to be any expert, but I've been giving you an awful lot of information and related stuff that does prove the existence of this technology, and we are going to look at some more of that in this presentation a little bit later on. But it starts out straight away with the fear porning and the Cold War button being pushed, with the blame being directed at Russia and possibly China have developed technologies capable of injuring the brain, and a US company also made a prototype in 2004, and we will probably discover that US company will be a governmental contract, and may even be DARPA. But portable microwave weapons capable of causing the mysterious spate of Havana syndrome, brain injuries in US diplomats and spies, have been developed by several countries in recent years, according to a leading American experts in the fields. And a US company also made the prototype of such a weapon for the Marine Corps back in 2000 in war, and the weapon, code named Medusa, was intended to be small enough to fit in a car and cause temporarily incapacitating effect, but with a low probability of fatality or permanent injury. So you could just light your microwave in your kitchen. You can set it to a low setting or a high setting. A low setting is only going to sort of maybe lukewarm your frozen burrito, but if you put it on full power, it will come out hotter than the center of the sun. But there is no evidence that the research was taken beyond the prototype phase. Not a lie if you believe it. And a report on that stage has now been removed from a US Navy website, interestingly enough, hiding the evidence, perhaps a little bit of exploitation maybe. But scientists with knowledge of the project said that the ethical considerations preventing human experimentation contributed to the project being shelved, but they said such consideration had not hindered US adversaries, including good old Russia and, of course, possibly the Robin to Russia's Batman, China. But nonetheless, we have looked at lots of US technologies in organizations and companies that have developed this type of weaponry or dual technology that could be used as weaponry. And we even, or I even have the theory and the thoughts and belief that Walkmans were in fact cytronic weapons. And again, in the Reality Decoded 1985 special, and in the last Canadian brain syndrome stream that we did look at this sort of stuff, I did feature a little bit about Walkmans and put it next to a real life mind control experimentation that was taking place here in Canada at the turn of the 1990s, end of the 1980s. That was carried out. But this technology exists. There is an awful lot of organizations and institutes that do reside within North America that do carry out experimentation unbeknown, and one of which would be the Montauk Project there at Camp Hero in the Long Island area of New York. But back to the article, the state of that science has for the most part been, if not abandoned, of course it has been abandoned, pretty much left fallow in the United States, because of course the United States can give you assurance and rest assured that they don't have this technology, would never ever dream of using it on anybody because of the ethical dilemmas, but not our enemies, Batman and Robin, Russia and China, although Batman and Robin were sort of good guy vigilantes, although Batman does have a little bit of more disturbingness about him if you do scratch the surface. But we're not here to decode Batman, we are decoding some reality and looking at real technology and information that will prove the existence of this that does reside within the hands of many US subsidiaries and government agencies. But it has not been fallow elsewhere, says James Giordano, who is a professor of neurology at the ethics at Georgetown University Medical Center. Giordano, who is also a senior fellow in biotechnology, biosecurity, and ethics at the U.S. Naval War College, was brought in as an advisor by the government in late 2016 after about 24 US diplomats began falling sick in Havana, and he later took part in an assessment for the US Special Forces Command on which countries were developing the technology and what they had achieved. And it became clear that some of the work that was conducted in the former Soviet Union was taken up again by Russia and its satellite proxies. Giordano said, adding that China had also developed directed energy devices to test the structure of various materials with technology which could be adapted into weapons. And a second major wave of brain injuries among US diplomats and intelligence officers took place in China in 2018. And as I said, is this rekindling and reigniting the Cold War, but with the absence of the threat of nuclear Armageddon and replacing it with the threat of microwave mind-frying weaponry and technology that would be silent and unseen and very, very fast and deadly. But this guy, I can't remember, I've been difficult. They also have the most bizarre fucking names whenever I read these articles. But anyway, Giorando, or whatever he calls himself, is restricted from giving details on which country has developed what kind of device. That's probably because it is, in fact, the United States and not Russia and China. But he said the new weapons use microwave frequencies able to disrupt brain function without any burning sensation, and we just saw at the start of this presentation and in previous presentations regarding frequency weaponry and technology that this technology and the weapons existed at least 40 years ago, and at the time that they provided they produced those reports, they were also saying that technology was nothing new. So it's been around an awful lot longer, and this is sort of the misinformation, misdirection, trying to sort of lead us to believe that it's brand new technology. And again, this does reignite thoughts and fears that will result to a second Cold War, in my opinion. This was important and rather frightening to us because it represented a state of advancement and sophistication of these types of instruments that heretofore had not been thought to be accomplished, again, he said. And again, we've already seen that 40 years ago, this advancement in sophistication was being used. But it is that narrative advancement and sophistication that is also being borrowed from the alien agenda narrative, or the UAP, as the government are now rebranding UFOs. And it is exactly the same. That they're saying that we can't explain this technology. It's nothing to do with the United States. We can assure you of that. Could be Russia, could be China, and we're not ruling out it could be alien. But they do use the words advanced and sophisticated technology. And could they possibly use these two in conjunction with each other, a la Project Bluebeam? Project Bluebeam's using holographic images of alien invaders alongside cytronic and mind control weaponry and technology. And that is why I do believe we did see the ramping out of 5G during the midst of the early stages of the COVIDian era. And the COVIDian era, in my opinion, is the smoke screen and the distraction and division tactic that is being used against us, while they do finalize and put all the pieces into place that they will need to use in order to carry out Project Bluebeam in the not so distant future. And at the beginning, I believe this is the seed plantation and the development of the blooming of the psyop that will be the fear porning and the use of the aliens and this weaponry to sort of keep folks in check who may be getting a little bit disgruntled and fed up with the COVID narrative. But if a US adversary has succeeding in miniaturizing the directed energy technology needed to inflict tissue damage from a distance, it makes such weapons a more plausible explanation for Havana syndrome. And I'm going to suggest to you guys that it has been miniaturized enough, and we carry it in the palms of our hands in the form of our smart or cellular phones or tablets. But more than 130 US officials, as we know, have officials from the State Department have been suffering from these symptoms, including dizziness, loss of balance, nausea, and headaches. And this was first identified in Cuba to give the name Havana syndrome. But the impact on some of the victims has even been debilitating and long-lasting. And in some of the recent incidents, they have involved NSC officials experiencing crippling symptoms in broad daylight in Washington. And the State Department, CIA, and Pentagon have all launched investigations, but have yet to come to conclusions. A National Academy of Science report in December found that the Havana syndrome injuries were mostly caused by directed pulse radio frequency energy. Skeptics of the microwave weapon theory have pointed to decades of US efforts to build such a device during the Cold War and since, without any confirmed success. But they have also argued that a weapon capable of inflicting brain injury from a distance would be too unwidely to use in urban areas. Active denial system. Active denial, ADS. Sorry for that cough, got something stuck in my throat there. But however, James Lynn, the leading US authority on the biological impact of microwave energy, said that large apparatus would not be needed to focus energy on a small area, heating it in a minute amount and causing a thermoelastic pressure wave that travels through the brain, causing damage to soft tissue. How many of those pressure waves have been bombarding and traveling through the brains of the massives over the last 17 months and possibly over the years and decades almost that we have had smart technology available for our use that is supposed to be fun, quirky, and convenient, keeps us in touch with everyone, but it is a weapon hidden in plain sight, and our little phones are in fact robots in disguise. Could they be Terminators? Let's wait and see. But the pressure wave would initially be experienced by the target as sound, and many of the US diplomats, spies, soldiers, and officials whose symptoms are being studied as part of the Havana Syndrome investigation reported hearing strange sounds at the onset of the attack. And I've mentioned many times, and some of you guys also have mentioned that you always and frequently have a ringing in your ear, tinnitus. It is called, and this is also one of the symptoms of Havana Syndrome, as they are calling it. But you can certainly put together a system in a couple of big suitcases that will allow you to put it in a van or in an SUV, Lynn, Professor Emeritus in the electrical and computer engineering department at the University of Illinois said. And as we just saw also in that CNN report, special report from 1985, that an individual made a mind control device with stuff he found at Radio Shack in a couple of weeks. It didn't look as though it was that gigantic, if you ask me. But it is not something that you need to have an enormous amounts of space or equipment to do it, as we did see back in 1985. There is a picture of a van and a good old 1950s car that they still use there. But the microwave weapon project for the US Marine Corps, first reported in Wired, was first developed by a company called Waveband Corporation, and it was codenamed Medusa. And I'm pretty sure that Waveband Corporation were contracted were a DARPA contractor, and I'm pretty sure if we look deeper at that, we would find that connection. But a contrived acronym for MOB Excise Detriment using Psylent audio, the weapon used the same technology as that suggested by Professor Lin. The microwave audio effect, which created a rapid microwave pulse that slightly heated soft tissue in the brain, causing a shockwave inside the skull. Scary stuff, guys, and bear in mind we could well be carrying this technology around with us, and I'm pretty sure that we are surrounded and saturated by all the devices needed to make sure that they can zap us at any given moment if they so desire. But the Waveband was given $1 million for the prototype, which according to the specifications of the contract would be portable, require low power, have a controllable radius of coverage. Why do you think they want us 6 feet apart from each other during the COVIDian era? It isn't anything to keep us safe from pathogens, because they kind of do render themselves useless after 6 feet. If you are 5 feet and 8 inches apart, then you're going to be fucked. But 6'1", then they can't get you. But my belief and thought and opinion and theory is that it is to create an electromagnetic frequency bubble around each and every individual, and the thought implantation and the mind control are in full effect in various waves. But it would be portable, require low power, have a controllable radius of coverage, and be able to switch from crowd to individual coverage. So as I said, your own personal little handler that can at a given moment or change frequencies that can give you a headache to all out brain damage, literally fry your brain if it wanted to. But it can also cause a temporarily incapacitating effect, have a low probability of fatality or permanent injury, and cause no damage to property, and have a low probability of affecting friendly personnel. A lot of requirements there, but as I said, guys, it can be targeted and individualized for crowds and individuals, and I'm pretty sure you could give people that were using this technology to disperse crowds protective equipment to keep them safe, or maybe inject them with some kind of bio or nanotechnology that would render the frequencies useless. But a Navy document in 2004, which they reiterate has since been removed from the Navy Small Business Innovation Research site, said that the hardware had been designed and built in brackets there, power measurements were taken and the required pulse parameters confirmed, it said. The document added experimental evidence of MAE, microwave auditory effect, was in fact observed. The wave band's former president and CEO, Lev Sadovnik, said, again another funny name, said he was limited in what he was allowed to say about the project, but he said that the immediate effects of MAE were disorientation and the impression of hearing sounds. Sadovnik said that a device capable of causing Havana syndrome symptoms could be relatively portable. It is quite conceivable that you can hide it in a car or a van, but it would not work over a long distance, he said. You can do it through a wall, say if you are in the next room in a hotel. And Sadovic also said that the Medusa prototype was not powerful enough to cause lasting harm, nor would that it be allowed to. But he said Russia was more advanced in understanding the human impact of microwave weapons, partly because it did not face the same ethical constraints. Again, trying to make America look like the white-hatted hero good guy, while the black-hatted evil villain Russia doesn't give a fuck about ethical constraints. And of course, the United States would never stoop to such low levels of draconian tyranny. But we have, the article continues here, very strict limitations, of course, on human tests and animal testing, he said. The Russians do not adhere to these standards. Again, in the previous Canadian brain syndrome stream, we looked at how at Stanford Institute they were using monkeys, and they used monkeys not because they were unable to they were unwilling, but they were unable to escape. But Giordano said, or Giordano, weird names, said that different political and ethical norms in Russia and China, and again, repeat the narrative, and repetition is the easiest form of mind control, brainwashing, and this is what they're trying to do, wash and mind control you into believing the official narrative and the propaganda. And, you know, as I said, they've pointed the finger at China and Russia and said how unethical they are and why they are advanced in this technology, unlike the United States, who scrapped this technology back in 2004 because of the ethical implications. But Russia and China could create unique opportunities to advance bioscientific and technological development in ways that would be unattainable in the United States and programs of our NATO allies. Not a lie if you believe it. But although many US officials and victims believe that Russia is behind the attacks, there is so far no compelling evidence that Moscow is responsible, just like there's no compelling evidence to suggest that Russia or China is responsible for the unidentified aerial phenomenon, aka UFOs, that keep being leaked and pushed out as propaganda on mainstream outlets. And in some cases, the Russian military intelligence vehicles are reported to have been close to the scene of an apparent attack. But it would not be unusual for the GRU to tail the US officials. I think the GRU is what they are recalling the KGB. KGB sounded much more cooler and sinister, if you ask me. But the Russians certainly had a long history of using microwave technology against United States diplomatic missions. The embassy in Moscow was found to be bathed in a microwave radiation in the 60s and early 70s, and through the intention, although the intention behind it was never clear, that episode erupted into a scandal when it was emerged to the US government had withheld the fact from its own diplomats. And at the same time, the US was spending huge amounts trying to develop its own directed energy weapons, both laser and microwave based. Mark Zaid, a lawyer representing some of the Havana syndrome victims, has a CIA briefing slide appearing to date from the 1960s or 70s, which shows a building being hit by microwaves from a next door structure. And Zaid said the slide was among the personal effects left by a deceased agency officer. And there is, I guess, the embassy in Havana. Look at those cool cars there. Is that a pink Cadillac? The military loves death rays. Everybody loves death rays. I'm not sure that the victims of death rays would love death rays, but death rays are also something that was mentioned in those CNN special reports from 1985. And the technology was developed by good old Nikola Tesla in the late 1800s. So the least the paperwork and the theories and the blueprints have existed, and if not, Tesla did develop this back then or not, who knows? Only the secret clandestine alphabet agencies will, and even then it will probably be on a need to know basis. But the military loves death rays. Everyone loves death rays, and lasers had some of the characteristic of death rays, so people kind of got excited about that. Recalled Cheryl Rufer, who worked on lasers and auditory weapon research in the 70s at Los Alamos Natural Lab in New Mexico. And that's another one of those sort of kind of weird Area 51 type places. But that auditory research eventually led to the long range acoustic device. We are going to look at that also in this presentation, that is also known as the sound cannon and is used by some police forces against demonstrators. And it was used last summer, but it did not lead to any death rays. Not yet. They probably didn't turn up the frequency high enough for it to reach death ray level. But thinking about something and actually building it are two different things, Rufer said. And the experience of seeing billions spent over the decades with little to show for it has left her skeptical about new claims of microwave weapon development. The military has had a whole lot of money sloshing around, and they will try lots of different things, and some of them are good and some of them are not so good. Giordano said, however, that while development has stalled in the United States, it has been continued by America's adversaries. And I bet they're going to say that they don't have the same ethical dilemma that the Americans have, and that is why they are advanced. And the initial 24 cases in Havana, said, represented a field test of the equipment. He also said that while the US focuses on expensive weapons for traditional warfare, Russia, China, and others are very interested in and dedicated to developing non-kinetic tools that can be leveraged below the threshold of what would formerly be considered acts of war, so as to engage in processes of mass disruption. And the Covidian mist, the Covidian era, is a process of mass disruption to the old ways and introducing us to new societal behavioral patterns and protocols. But if you are joining us today from Canada, we have a small favor to ask. Tens of millions have placed their trust in The Guardian's high impact journalism since we started publishing 200 years ago, turning us into moments of crisis, uncertainty, and solidarity, and hope. More than 1.5 million readers from 180 countries have recently taken the step to support us financially, keep us open to all, and fiercely independent. I thought that was the article continuing then, but it's a little bit of a begging plea for money. But that is where it did end, that the weapons that would be below the threshold of what would formerly be considered acts of war, as to engage in the process of mass disruption. But interesting stuff there, and again, the denial that the US has been continuing this research. But we do have lots of evidence, and we have seen lots of evidence previously to contradict this statement. And this is, as I said, what I believe is the seed plantation for the official narrative and the propaganda for the reignition of the Cold War. So we did also hear in that CNN report from 1985 that they mentioned a movie titled Brainstorm, and we are going to go and check out the trailer for that movie next before we do come back and look at some other interesting articles and videos on the subject of silent warfare, silent weapons for quiet wars. Stay tuned.
Suppose it were possible to transfer from one mind to another the experience of another person.
Hey, there it is.
Any person, any experience.
I'm telling you, it works.
Test, sound, taste?
Everything,
Smell.
everything, 100%. In fact, better.
Did you have a breakthrough or not?
Yes.
I'd like a demonstration. Knock my socks off.
What about military applications?
Wide open.
Missile guidance, that kind of thing?
They're going to be able to plug right into the old noodle.
I made that for you.
What is it?
It's me.
You've blown communication as we've known it right out of the water. You know that, don't you?
So something happened to me. It was more than just a sexual fantasy. It was a feeling I had. I'm more than I was, Mike.
I'm scared. But the thing is, I like it. I want more.
No, I can't authorize this.
It's a chance to take a scientific look at the scariest thing a person ever has to face.
This is not the research we're interested in.
This is my project. I don't want to see it end up on some defense scrap heap before we know what it's really about.
I want these personal experiments stopped.
I told you I want to play it out.
Nobody plays that tape.
Arrest him.
They're onto us.
Thank you very much. Well, you must be wondering, what is a brainwashing mind control expert talking at a TEDx conference on emerging technology, right? Or not? Does everybody understand how important our world is and our minds are, and just the unprecedented amount of influence that's coming at us? I can tell you as a mental health professional, someone who has been helping people get out of cults and mind control and brainwashing situations for 40 years, constantly people are confused. What is a cult? What is mind control? What is brainwashing? Oh, my boss brainwashes me. Oh, advertising brainwashes me. The government brainwashes me, etc. But what I'm here to say is actually I want to present a model for you to think about, a spectrum from healthy to unhealthy influence. Healthy influence, there's informed consent. You know what you're getting involved with. You know about the person. There's choice. On the destructive side, there's deception. There's manipulation. On the healthy side, it respects your free will. It respects your conscience, where the unhealthy side is using guilt manipulation, fear manipulation, and wanting you to become tranced out, obedient slaves. And we have on this continuum some themes. Again, this is not a binary of all or nothing. This is a spectrum. And my call to action is your minds are precious, and only you should control your mind. I'm calling for people to take responsibility for their own lives, their own minds, and realize just how vulnerable we really all are. On this chart, we have leaders talking about healthy leaders that are transparent and accountable and responsible. And on the other side, the destructive side, narcissistic, psychopathological, elitist, never admits they do anything wrong, secretive, deceptive, and they want loyalty and they want dependency. And in terms of organizations, there needs to be checks and balances. There needs to be individual diversity. And the means actually help to create the ends. On the destructive side, people justify the ends, justify the means. We're going to save the world, different cults say, and therefore we justify all kinds of unethical behavior. And the biggest vulnerability, if I was sitting there, I'd be going, I'm too smart. It would never happen to me. I'm too together. I know myself. I have good family, good education. And what I'm saying is, it happened to me. So I'm standing in front of you as someone who in 1974 was going to Queens College. I was a creative writing major. Writing poetry was my life goal. I wanted to become a professor and teach writing. And then I get into the moon cult through a deceptive recruitment. After my girlfriend dumped me and 3 women were pretending to be college students, deceptively recruited me at a college campus. And I wound up spending 2.5 years in a fascist right-wing cult, where I turned my back on my Jewish upbringing. I was raised in Flushing, Queens. I turned my back on my family. I turned my back on my values. And I came to believe the Messiah was on the earth, and I needed to follow him blindly and kill myself if I had to for the cult. So my question to you is, how would you know if you were under mind control? How would anybody know? Because when I got into the moon cult, my friends tried to talk me out of it. My family tried to talk me out. They said, Steve, you're brainwashed. You're mind control. Wake up. He's disgusting. He's a fat Korean billionaire. He's not the Messiah. Come on. And I was like, you just don't understand. Time will tell how great a leader he is and such. So there really is a formula. I've been spending my life helping deprogram. I don't like that term. I call it strategic interactive approach, to help coach family and friends on how to ethically influence, to wake up and get out of cults. But there is a formula, but it really depends on knowing this model and being able to be clear about it, and what I refer to as the bite model of mind control, which I'm coming to in a moment. But first I want to just talk about, this is a scientific reality. This is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. This is version 5, and the criteria of being in a mind control cult has existed in version 3, 4, and 5. And it's an identity disturbance. Literally, the Steve Hassan that wanted to write poetry and loved reading and loved my family and loved my values and the values of democracy was suppressed by a cult identity, a pseudo identity that was programmed into me. This is validated by all kinds of research from former military intelligence experts like Robert J. Lifton, Margaret Singer, Lewis West, Edgar Schein. So what I'm talking to you about today about emerging technology is that the internet is giving unprecedented opportunity to bad people to take over our lives, take over our minds, influence our elections. And in particular, trafficking is a major world problem. There's an estimated 25 million people who are being trafficked. And terrorist cults like Daesh, ISIS, I've studied how they recruit on the internet, and it's very sophisticated. This pimp wrote a book on how to brainwash the hose. I know it's disgusting, but the methodology is just being taught openly on the internet for anyone who wants to abuse people. This is a high-profile case right now in federal court in New York. It's a cult called Nexium. And this is a victim who was branded with the initials of the cult leader, Keith Raniere. And the defense of Keith Raniere and Claire Bronfman, who is a billionaire heiress, has been funding this particular cult, are saying people voluntarily chose to be branded and give up collateral where they could be blackmailed if they ever wanted to leave the group. So I'm hoping this will be a precedent-setting case. So I wanted to tell you, cults and mind control groups come in many different shapes, sizes: political cults, therapy cults, spiritual cults, multi-level marketing, large group awareness, and pseudo-therapeutic ones. And I really want people to understand that there are behavioral variables that can demonstrate where on the continuum any relationship, could be a controlling husband or wife, could be a controlling company, could be a controlling group, is. I'm at 63 years of age. I've entered a doctoral program at the encouragement of a professor at the program in psychiatry and the law at Harvard Medical School, because I got involved with this forensic think tank because I realized we need to change the legal system. We need to have clarity of thinking that there is unethical influence and there's ethical influence. And by going through this, I did my first research project with over 1,000 respondents, and we got significance. Any group, any relationship that's just depriving you of sleep, is doing behavior modification techniques, is demanding obedience to authority. As I mentioned before, deceptive recruitment or lack of informed consent is a huge criteria of a destructive cult. Propaganda, confession, spying, turning people in. And in terms of thought control, totalist ideology, loaded language, thought-terminating cliches. And I want to talk for a minute about hypnosis. I was in a cult for 2.5 years. By the way, I was deprogrammed out of the Moon cult, if you were wondering. How'd you get out of this? You were so fanatical. I fell asleep at the wheel of a van and drove into the back of a tractor-trailer truck at 80 miles an hour, which got me away physically from the group, visiting my sister, and my family did a deprogramming intervention, which took 5 days before I could start thinking maybe Moon wasn't the Messiah. And it was 4 years after that that I saw a stage hypnotist do a hypnosis demonstration, and I went, that's what I used to do when I was a leader doing lectures for the Moonies. And that's another TED Talk, all about the dark side of hypnosis. But mind controllers know how to use it. And by the way, when young people especially are at the screens for hours and hours and hours, binge watching radicalizing YouTube videos, this is a very destructive combination. The universal mind control technique in all my research is what I call phobia indoctrination. It's the indoctrination of irrational fears that if you ever question the leader or the group, terrible things will happen to you. And in my case, I was brought to see the Exorcist movie in 1974 with 100 other Moonies. We were bussed up to hear Moon give a speech about God made the Exorcist movie. And this was a prophecy of what would happen to you if you ever leave the Unification Church. And there I was, a young Jewish man, 19 years old, didn't believe in Satan at all, afraid of invisible entities invading my mind if I didn't do exactly as I was indoctrinated to do. And I did not have a negative thought until my deprogramming. So I talked about a lot of these points already in the bite model. And I just want to talk for a minute about just how much the internet is being manipulated now. When the internet began, it was the greatest thing for people like myself, former members, who were trying to share our knowledge and experience with others. We could disseminate the information. And cults like Scientology and the Moonies and such, you know, were trying to suppress information. But it was a wonderful thing. Now things are buried. Search engine manipulation is taking place. Wikipedia has been co-opted, unfortunately, to the chagrin of so many folks. Fake websites, false news. And what's coming down the pike is incredible positive things can come out of the internet, but also incredible programming opportunities for despots and dictators and cult leaders and traffickers. When I was being recruited by these women, they flirted with me and I answered all their questions about my background. But now data is being collected in mass about us, making us much more vulnerable and susceptible to mind control. And I just mentioned some of the internet games, etc., that groups like ISIS are using. So things like confusion techniques, sleep deprivation, subliminal programming is taking place right now on the internet. There are people teaching hypnosis. If you want to rape somebody, they'll teach you techniques for covert hypnosis, and it's just there. I know the news right now is about 3D printing of guns, but mind control techniques are freely being taught on the internet, and it's very, very dangerous. So as I sum up, I want to just say, avoid black and white, all or nothing, good versus evil mindsets. And that people can interact with people who've been indoctrinated and help them to wake up. Because deep down inside, I believe people want to be free and they want to know the truth and they don't like to be manipulated and suffocating. And remember, there is a model for how to discern. And going forward, we need massive education in schools, not just anti-bullying programs, but how to protect yourself from people who are manipulating and mind controlling you. We need to teach critical thinking skills. We need to teach social psychology. And I want to do a shout out to one of my mentors, Philip Zimbardo, who has a program called the Heroic Imagination Project, which has small video vignettes of social psychology demonstrations that will help it creates a curriculum to help young people understand just how vulnerable we are to groups, to peer pressure, to authority figures, as well as other psychology, social psychology things. I just came from a complex systems conference, and I realized that as we're developing AI, we need to teach our computer systems this model to be able to look at behaviors specifically of what anybody's doing and such. It's going to be very, very important. And we need trustworthy portals for information. And I want to do a call to action for former members. This includes abused women who had abusive narcissistic husbands, the Me Too movement. If you look through the bite model, it fits that situation too. Destructive families can fit that situation. I want people who've had this experience to say, yes, I was vulnerable, it happened to me, and let's move on, which is what I've been trying to do with my life. And my last message is, it's your mind, it's precious, and only you should control it. Because we have this beautiful world, and we want to live together and help each other in love, in truth, in goodness. And I just love TEDx. I'm in the cult of TEDx. Happily. Thank you.
Dr. Alan Fry, a biophysicist at GE's Advanced Electronics Center, Cornell University, and a contractor for the Office of Naval Research, discovered in 1958 that the auditory system responds to electromagnetic energy in a portion of the radio frequency spectrum at low power densities, well below that necessary for biological damage. The human auditory system and a table radio, he said, may be 1 order of magnitude apart in sensitivity in a portion of the radio frequency spectrum. Fry proposed stimulating the nervous system without the damage caused by electrodes. He wrote 2 papers, Microwave Auditory Effect and the Applications, and Human Auditory Response to Modulated Electromagnetic Energy. Dr. Fry's work had obvious implications for covert operations. He synchronized pulse microwaves with the myocardial rhythm of a frog's heart. The heart stopped beating. Dr. Fry had perfected the induction of heart seizures by beamed electromagnetics. He microwaved cats and found that stimulation of the hypothalamus had a powerful effect on emotions. Fry found that human subjects exposed to 1310 MHz to 2982 MHz microwaves at average power densities of 0.4 to 2 milliwatts per cubic centimeter perceived auditory sounds. The peak power densities were on the order of 200 to 300 milliwatts per cubic centimeter, and the pulse repetition frequencies varied from 200 to 400 Hertz. Dr. Fry referred to this auditory phenomenon as RF, or radio frequency sound. The sensation occurred instantaneously at average incident power densities well below that necessary for known biological damage, and appeared to originate from within or near the back of the head. Fry was reluctant to experiment on humans, but others, particularly paperclip scientists, were not. Dr. Ross Addy worked at UCLA and rigged the brains of lab animals to transmit to a radio receiver which shot back signals to a device that sparked any behavior desired by the researcher. Dr. Addy worked closely with émigré Nazi scientists after World War II. Addy determined that emotional states and behavior can be remotely influenced merely by placing a subject in an electromagnetic field. By directing a carrier frequency to stimulate the brain and using amplitude modulation to shape the wave to mimic a desired EEG frequency, he was able to impose a 4.5 CPS theta rhythm on his subjects and put them to sleep. Dr. Joseph Sharp and Alan Fry experimented with microwaves seeking to transmit spoken words directly into the audio cortex via a pulsed microwave analog of the speaker's sound vibration. Indeed, Fry's work in this field, dating back to 1960, gave rise to the so-called Fry effect, which is now more commonly referred to as microwave hearing. Within the Pentagon, this ability is known as artificial telepathy. Addy and others have compiled an entire library of frequencies and pulsation rates which can affect the mind and nervous system.
So we just heard from TEDx, a presentation all about mind control, and we just saw a short video on something known as the Fry effect in regard to electromagnetic frequency mind control. And here at USAanticommunist.com, we are going to look at 23 US patented mind control devices or related devices from 1956 to 2003. We're not going to read each and every one of them. We are going to kind of fast track to the bottom, but this page provides a list of 23 key mind control related devices that have been issued patents from the US Patent Office between 56 and 2003, and they all have links to them that do go to PDFs, which we aren't going to click off, so don't worry, because some of those PDFs, guys, are literally pages and pages and pages long, and if we read each and every word of those PDFs, we would be here for weeks, if not months. But many of these patents are microwave hearing based technology used in electromagnetic mind control, and also used in organized stalking of individuals with directed energy weapons, and also see the targeting of citizens with microwave and other directed energy weapons. If you are not familiar with microwave hearing, aka the Frey effect, watch this 4-minute video, which we just did. This is not, however, a list of all patented mind control technology and devices in the United States. This is only a list of some of them, and there is a link to videos on mind control weapons, and we could spend a day or two just on this one page alone following all of these links to some of the very, very interesting patents for mind control technology and what exactly that technology is designed to do. But the article reads, we know that at least one group of National Security Agency devil worshippers are known to be working long-range takeover plans here, spanning over several generations, plan to develop and use many of these technologies to mind control the planet, including the United States population. And there is a video link there that you can watch that shows these satanic infiltrators and their mind control devices. Again, we could spend, as I said, days looking at this site alone. But these mind control monsters are still inside of the government today and running the show behind the shield of the National Security Act that was put out in 1947. And other mad scientists such as Dr. M.A. Persinger, the inventor of the God helmet and authority on electromagnetic mind control via microwaves, have further developed electromagnetic mind control. And here we are going to look at some of the patterns listed here very, very slowly. Hypnotic inducer control machine, apparatus for producing visual simulation in the subconscious, transmission via movies and films, apparatus for producing visual and auditory simulation, subconscious transmission via TV, nervous excitation device, method and apparatus for improving neural performance in human subjects, hearing systems, RF microwave in brackets, method of and apparatus for producing swept frequency modulated audio signal patterns for inducing sleep. And interestingly enough, there is a method of inducing and maintaining stages of sleep in the human being. They could probably work hand in hand with each other, as many of these technologies, I'm sure, are designed to do so in sync up. Apparatus for remotely monitoring and altering brain waves via RF electromagnetic frequencies and waves. Auditory subliminal message system and method in brackets subliminal brainwash via music and sound. Method of changing a person's behavior, subconscious brainwash via video. An auditorial subliminal program system, silent brainwash via music or other sound. Apparatus for inducing frequency reduction in brainwave. Another one here, hearing device for microwave hearing. Hearing system, microwave hearing via open air broadcasts. Silent subliminal presentation system, aka silent sound microwave. Another one for method of and apparatus for inducing desired states of consciousness. from 1991. Method and system for warning birds of hazard. That's interesting because our birds always seem to know when storms in sort of bad weather is approaching and seem to flock away from the scene before the devastation arrives, and as often sort of portrayed in movies as well. Is that their instinct, or is it the result of frequencies warning them to get out of the way? Another patent here for acoustic heterodyne device and method via ultrasound ventriloquist effects. That would be an interesting one to look further into, but we won't. Time is not necessarily of the essence, but let's try and keep this within a reasonable time frame, although that is the attempts that sometimes do go out the window, as I do believe information has no constraint and there is no such thing as too much information. Here is another patent for system and method, including brainwave analysis and or use of brain activity for remote viewing, apparatus and method of broadcasting audible sound using ultrasonic sound as a carrier, and a method and device for implementing the radio frequency hearing effect is one there from 2002. Apparatus for audibly communicating speech using the radio frequency hearing effect, using microwave hearing technology. So that is the list of 23 patents. As I said, we did just fast track them. As I said, we could have spent days and hours and weeks looking at each and every one individually. And I did mention that these PDFs are quite long, and it would be quite time consuming to read each and every one of them, but I have sort of briefly scanned into a few of them, and really and truly the dual technology and the purpose to control the entire globe is not unrealistic, and especially when you see all the patents for technology that can do just that. So question your own thoughts, your own behaviors, and question everything you have ever been led to believe, and don't rule out the thought that was implanted and you were programmed to be exactly the way you are, because that is the desired programming of your targeters. If or not you share that thought and opinion, that is entirely up to you. I don't tell you to believe anything, I just tell you to make of it what you will, and why I provide you so much information, thoughts and opinions for your own educational purposes, so you can hopefully formulate your own objective opinions on what is really going on, and that is the true intent of Reality Decoded, to decode our reality and try and search for answers we may not want to know. But nonetheless, guys, let's go and have a look at psychological operations and psychological warfare, also silent weapons for silent warfare, before we do try to wrap things up in this latest Reality Decoded presentation titled Silent Warfare. Here we are at the RAND Corporation's official website, rand.org. And the RAND Corporation, for those of you who don't know, we have mentioned in some previous Tavistock related streams, are the jewel in the Tavistockian crown of mass manipulation, and the RAND Corporation is a future presentation stream that we can focus solely on their involvement and influence around the globe. And an awful lot of corporations and subsidiaries will fall under the RAND Corporation umbrella, and of course, as we've mentioned, the RAND Corporation is pretty much the jewel in the crown of the Tavistockian network of manipulation organizations. But this is a section on their website designed solely looking into reports, methods, and research in education on psychological warfare, and an awful lot of interesting stuff. Again, as I said, we could spend an entire stream, and probably will, on the RAND Corporation in the future. We could possibly spend more than one one stream looking at them, but we are just going to look at a couple of these reports in this section of psychological warfare that are of particular interest to me. Hopefully they will be of interest to you for your educational and informative purposes. But it starts off by saying psychological warfare involves the planned use of propaganda and other psychological operations to influence the opinions, the emotions, and the attitudes, behaviors of opposite groups. The RAND Corporation has studied military information support operations in many countries and war zones, and has provided objective and supportable recommendations to policymakers on methods and tactics to employ or defend against these operations. So they learn to sort of perfect and then sell their findings to the highest bidder on how they can either employ psychological warfare tactics upon unsuspecting victims, or how they can defend. But it really is more the employing of these tactics that RAND Corporation does use their expertise in, do lead in their expertise on their psychological operation and psychological warfare research and recommendations. So there is an awful lot of reports here, and you can click on from sort of over the archives from the weeks and months. They seem to sort of have updates on these reports sort of weekly and monthly. One there, human aspects of Air Force operations, detecting malign or subversive information efforts over social media. That is an interesting one for sure. The United States, we'll just read briefly, has a capability gap in detecting malign or subversive information campaigns in time to respond before they influence large audiences. And again, this is what your share and agree, copy and paste is. It creates those large audiences, and the copy and paste and share and agree is designed to influence those audience and field them into digital fields as part of the digital farming network. But this is a novel method, can now detect these efforts or even employ them, if you would. And here you go. Explore psychological warfare by type or by authors. All sorts. Research, there you go. Look, research, brief, blog, press, people. Lots and lots here on social media and psychological operations in particular that is of interest. But you can choose if or not you want to click on the RAND Corporation official website and look into this for yourself. One here, look, from May 19th, last month, exploring Chinese military thinking on social media manipulation against Taiwan. Chinese bomber flights around Taiwan. For what purpose is another article to read on psychological warfare. Borrowing a boat out to sea, the Chinese military's use of social media for influence operations. Again, the RAND Corporation probably helped out the Chinese military with that use of social media influence operation. Cognitive domain operation, the PLA's new holistic concept for influence. Artificial intelligence and the manufacturing of reality is one we are gonna click on because very, very interesting. This is a RAND blog, artificial intelligence and the manufacturing of reality, and this is exactly what is being used in social media programming and platforms against you. The artificial collects all your data and then manufactures a reality of design, of tailor-made design solely for you, that you will then read displayed on your news feed. And this was by Christopher Paul and Marek N. Possard. And this article was submitted in response to a call for ideas issued by the co-chairs of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. And you can find all of RAND's submissions here with a link. So, as I said, RAND Corporation are elbow deep in the manipulation and the distribution of methods of manipulation for the masses. But in 2016, a third of surveyed Americans told researchers that they believe the government was concealing what they knew about the North Dakota crash, a conspiracy made up for the purpose of the survey by the researchers themselves. And I believe that this tactic and methodology is being used right now in lines and in accordance with the COVIDian mist narrative. And this crash never actually happened, just as I don't believe that the Wuhan lab was the site of the outbreak of a virus with a 99% survival rate. And I believe that this is research and experimentation to just be used against us, is a manipulation tool to divide and conquer, put us into either the anti-mask, anti-vax demograph or into the pro-mask, pro-vax demograph. And this again is sort of one of those sort of tactics that I believe is sort of similar to Crimson Mist, dividing the populace and then providing both of those divisions with all the information and propaganda to anger them against each other, and then eventually using electromagnetic and radio frequency technology and weaponry, they could fry the minds of those opposing factors of society and set them loose against each other, just as they did back in Rwanda. But as the article says, this crash never happened, but it highlights the flaws humans carry with them in deciding what is or what is not real. And the internet and other technologies have made it easier to weaponize and exploit these flaws, beguiling more people faster and more compellingly than ever before. Beguiling, I believe that is, sorry, my apologies there. It is likely that artificial intelligence will be used to exploit the weaknesses inherent in human nature at a scale, speed, and level of effectiveness previously unseen. Stuff I've been telling you for months, guys, that your phone is your artificially intelligent handler and controller. And it can do it in real time and faster than a blink of the eye in many ways, provide you with your next article or topic of manipulation. But adversaries, as always, like Russia, could pursue goals for using these manipulations to study, reshape how targets view the world around them, effectively manufacturing their reality. If some of our predictions are accurate, all governance reliant on public opinion, mass perception, and or citizens' participation is at risk. And again, this is what I keep telling you. You share and agree, copy and paste memetics. This is your mind control, this is your programming, and they are turning you into little radio controlled robotic humanoids that will carry out, unbeknown, the desires and wishes of the masses. And most of that desire and wishes is to become a propaganda spreader, depending on what demographic you fall in. They will provide you with your share and agree, copy and paste propaganda memetics. But one characteristic, human foible, whatever that word is how easily we can falsely redefine what we experience. This flaw, called the Thomas theorem, suggests that if men define simulations as real, they are real in their consequences. Put another way, humans do not only respond to the objective features of their situations, but also to how they their own subjective interpretations of those situations, even when these beliefs are factually wrong. Other shortcomings include our willingness to believe information that is not true, not a lie if you believe it, and a propensity to be as easily influenced by emotional appeals to as reason, as demonstrated by the North Dakota crash falsehood. And again, those emotional appeals can be 99% of you aren't brave enough to share and agree. And that is an emotional appeal because you want to be the 1% that is brave enough, when really it is on its head that 99% of you have been brainwashed and programmed and manipulated into sharing the false psychology there. But machines can also be taught to exploit these flaws more effectively than humans. And again, sort of machines don't have consciousness or empathy or sympathy like humans, and artificial intelligent algorithms can test what content works and what does not over and over again on millions of people at high speed until their targets react as desired. And again, this is sort of what the rhetoric, the mimetic rhetoric of things like smash the like, hit the bell. That's not to help and improve the statistics of the particular YouTuber. That is just to see how many of you will respond to calls to action or to triggers. Please smash the like, and then if 15 out of 20 smash the like, then they've got a 75% control over the mindset of that audience. And again, this is stuff your least favorite YouTuber, me, TSB, has been telling you for weeks, months, if not years. But consider the role of Russia in 2016 British vote to withdraw from the European Union. Again, Russia was supposedly involved and influenced the voting in the American election that saw Donald Trump take office at the White House. There is evidence that the Russian-linked Twitter accounts sent more than 1,000 tweets from 3,800 accounts promoting a pro-Brexit vote on the day of voting, and such tweets appeared to have fanned the flames of pro-Brexit camp on Twitter over time, with the anti-Brexit camp reacting a few days before the election. Again, this is what I believe is being used now, these methods in manipulation tactics, with the pro-mask, pro-vaccine crowd, as well as it is also being used to manipulate and control the anti-vax, anti-mask crowd. But engaging emerging technologies, including generative adversarial networks, natural language processing, and quantum computing, could make such scenarios far more effective in the future. For example, Russian actors could tailor the message in these tweets using a combination of the characteristics of the recipients and their behaviors, mirroring the behavior of the individual. And this is what the artificial intelligent algorithm does. It learns your behavioral patterns and then creates a mirrored image of that will indeed provide you with the manipulation tactics to share and agree with. And somebody once said, I only share and agree with memes because they say what I'm thinking. But are they saying what they're thinking? Are they telling you what to think? And have they been designed? And when you share and agree, that's given the algorithm the clarification that it did in fact tailor-made that particular piece of mind control or propaganda perfected to perfection for your purposes. But the characteristics of the recipients and their behaviors will be mirrored on various online platforms based on user data that they legally buy from data brokers, illegal data they purchase from hackers, and data they retrieve for themselves. And so I say, guys, please be careful what you share and agree with and what you copy and paste, because really and truly this is what is mind controlling and brainwashing turning you into their desired candidate. And we did speak again about Manchurian Karens and were they programmed to behave in the way they were. My suspicions are yes, they were. But these opportunities are available today, and some may become increasingly easier to exploit with artificial intelligence. And in the future, for example, adversaries like Russia could query these data streams to tailor their message and test them on social media platforms to identify the most effective messages. Again, this is a little bit, are we choosing our own reality in the all-out apocalypse, choose your own adventure simulation, and depending on how many of us sort of respond to alien themes or how many of us respond to zombie themes may or may not determine what the next psyop false flag will be. But such adversaries, as we said, could tailor make these messages and devices in platforms according to what data they collect. And those in the social networks via a wide variety of online media, in brackets, e.g. traditional social media platforms, augmented reality, virtual reality devices, or non-invasive brain-computer interfaces can be used to deliver these methods. But currently, much of this is done manually, but artificial intelligence allows for a change in scale. Emerging technologies will allow this loop of alliterative reinforcement to occur almost instantaneously in real time and at a scale affecting far more people than was seen during the Brexit vote. Manufacturing reality isn't new. Humans are and have always been vulnerable to being tricked, provoked, conditioned, deceived, or otherwise manipulated. Since at least the 1960s, the Soviet the military and subsequent Russian organizations recognized opportunities for exploiting this vulnerability, and that is why the Soviets developed a formal research program called reflexive control therapy to model how one could manipulate targets' perceptions of reality. And the theory focuses on ways to strategically transmit information to targets in ways that could subtly change the motives and logics of their decisions. And the end goal is to get people to do something by making them believe it is in their best interest. And this is a little bit of sort of how cults work. They kind of brainwash the individuals into thinking the cult is for their best interest. And I do believe that they are creating online virtual cults via social media. And you would never know. The last people to know that they're in a cult are the people in the cult themselves. And there is a very, very huge cult hive mind that is very, very evident if you pay attention on your social media platforms. But it is a longer article, so I just wanted to sort of highlight a little bit of what they are saying. And again, you can choose to go and look at this more if you want, but I just did want to sort of purposely highlight out there that it does reflect a lot of the thoughts, opinions, and theories I have been sharing with you in terms of the artificially intelligent handlers that is using your data against you and providing you all the memetical mind control that you could possibly not desire. But let's go back and look at the list, because there was one more that I did want to point out before we move on to something else. So this is the other article of interest I did want to show you at the Rand Corporation website, and in the section solely designated to psychological warfare. And this article or report is on assessing and evaluating Department of Defense efforts to inform, influence, and persuade. And inform, influence, and persuade, aka IIP methods, can be used by pretty much any organization that wants to inform, influence, and persuade individuals into a particular narrative. And they can also be used to misinform and misinfluence if you want. But they're the same principles advised. You can use them for good or for bad reasons. But there are some research questions there. What are good practices for identifying objectives and assessing IIP efforts to ensure that they support the larger goals of an information operations campaign? How can a logic model support assessments, planning, and connect activities to objectives? What measures are best for gauging progress towards objectives, and how should this information be collected? How can assessment inform reference to IIP efforts, and what are the indications that an effort is succeeding or failing? And how should an information operation staff officer approach the planning and execution of assessment in preparation for and during an operation? And again, this is all about informing, influencing, and persuading. How can assessment inform refinements to IPA? Sorry, I had difficulty with that word. I just wanted to read it for myself. But anyway, the key to achieve national security objectives, the US government and US Department of Defense must effectively and credibly communicate with a broad range of foreign audiences. And these activities also represent a significant investment. The DoD spends more than $250 million per year on inform, influence, and persuade efforts on a whole level of platforms, not just in military, but in civilian fields. And it is clearly important to measure the performance and effectiveness of these efforts. But assessment has remained a challenge for the DoD. To better support IIP planners and assessment practitioners, this report presents a realistic but fictional scenario as a context for a step-by-step example of how assessment planning should work in practice. In the process, it demonstrates several core principles of effective assessment articulated in previous RAND research, along with insights and best practices for developing assessments that can accurately measure progress towards campaign objectives and directly support the decision making. And they recommend that they ensure all objectivities of an IIP effort are SMART, and that is not self-monitoring advanced research technology SMART. That is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, which will probably be assisted by self-monitoring analysis research technology. They also recommend to break objectives into smaller subordinate objectives or sequential steps for a clear picture of progress towards larger objectives. Develop a logic model in reverse to avoid bad assumptions and identify possible constraint barriers, disruptors, or unintended consequences. Begin by identifying objectives and work backwards to identify the activities and resources that will support the objective. Be thoughtful in selecting measures. Choose multiple measures that will both detect success and failure and capture trends over time. Seek out existing sources of data to support the assessment and measure only as precisely as required. And here is a table of contents: introduction and purpose, review of relevant assessments, scenario, worked examples, and conclusion to review. But the scenario, can we click on that? No, we can't. But basically, guys, what they use here is they come up with a narrative or a story or propaganda, for want of a better word, that they need to sort of control the minds, and they use influence, inform, influence, and persuade tactics to deliver this propaganda or behavioral or thought pattern that they want in the desire of the masses. And they use, as I said, social media and algorithmic artificial intelligence to deliver this, to inform, influence, and persuade you. And one of the ways that they persuade you to do it is 99% of you aren't brave enough to share and agree, and that is a persuasive tactics, maybe even a little bit of peer pressure. But that was something I did want to point out at the RAND website on the section designed solely for giving you information, reports, and educational presentations on the art of psychological warfare and psychological operations.
Persuade, change, influence. That is the motto of the U.S. Army's Psychological Operations Regiment. Military operations do not always require lethal force on a battlefield. Military information support operations can employ non-lethal actions and messages to attain military objectives. PSYOP soldiers are highly skilled, specialized operators whose work encompasses executing psychological actions in the development and dissemination of influential messages.
I think the most important thing for a PSYOP soldier is to be very well-rounded. It's an ability to fit into any environment.
Trained in persuasive techniques, PSYOP soldiers use their skills to change attitudes, behaviors, values, beliefs, and influence foreign audiences through executing actions in the delivery of messages utilizing a variety of techniques.
A tactical PSYOP team will usually be attached to a special forces team, and what they do is they look at what those teams are trying to do, and in order to support that, they find behaviors of the local populace that they can change to best accomplish that mission.
While performing military information support operations, PSYOP soldiers conduct thorough research and analysis of the intended audience. They employ specific communication methods using a variety of techniques, technology, and mediums to develop and deliver messages which will have the greatest impact and influence. These methods often incorporate the use of state-of-the-art multimedia products that convey U.S. policy and national objectives. The PSYOP soldier is a critical component of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command.
To be a successful PSYOP soldier, I think somebody has to be dedicated, they have to be motivated, they have to be intelligent, and they have to be able to work not only in a team, but also independently and be a free thinker.
Special Operations soldiers deploy worldwide on missions that range in size and scope from the tactical up to the strategic level. Smaller tactical or battlefield level operations are used to secure immediate or short-term goals. Strategic level operations encompass broad national security objectives during both peacetime and war. Typically, PSYOP soldiers deploy in small teams of 3 to 12 soldiers with an average mission length of less than a year. PSYOP soldiers may be employed in operations which support conventional forces, unconventional warfare, or counterinsurgency techniques, and in conducting raids, peacekeeping operations, evacuations, and rescue missions. When deploying, you may also assist other government agencies in support of foreign governments, humanitarian assistance, and drug interdiction.
I was briefing a Minister of Security with what I thought was the best method for that host nation to better the image of the police force at that time. That was the example.
PSYOP soldiers can also operate as a force multiplier, meaning they increase the operational capabilities of the military organizations they are supporting. This requires PSYOP soldiers to be versatile, agile leaders in top physical condition who are tactically and technically proficient with strong intellectual and communication skills.
Be prepared for a very diverse mission set and be prepared to study more than you've ever studied before. We are cultural experts and you have to be at that standard. You have to be both physically fit and mentally fit in order to be capable enough to do your job.
Following assessment and selection, PSYOP candidates receive extensive, specialized training at the U.S. Army John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
I think the PSYOP soldier thrives in environments that can be chaotic just because of the challenge. Just going through the course itself, each day presents a challenge, each task presents a challenge, and mastering those challenges throughout the course will give you the skills to master those challenges throughout deployments.
Training includes up to 12 months of instruction in influence operations, foreign language, cultural awareness, regional studies and analysis of political, social, and economic condition for their designated area of operations. To be a PSYOP soldier, you must obtain qualifying scores on both the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery and the Defense Language Aptitude Battery.
Starting out in the PSYOP community has enabled me to get a lot of free education. I've gotten my baccalaureate. I've now recently received my master's degree. I've been to many different schools that enable me to accomplish my mission at a higher level.
You must be eligible for a secret clearance, airborne qualified, or volunteer for airborne training. PSYOP soldiers' benefits include airborne and foreign language proficiency pay, civilian education opportunities, worldwide travel, advanced specialized training, and potential for faster promotions.
Within the ranks for myself, within 3 months of being in the unit, I was promoted to staff sergeant and became a team leader. And I've witnessed my peers rise through the ranks at a much quicker pace than when I was in conventional Army.
The Army's most specialized experts in influencing foreign audiences. Psychological operations.
This is a test of the long-range acoustic device LRAD.
One acoustic device is gaining ground daily by being law enforcement's go-to choice for crowd control scenarios and search and rescue missions. That device is LRAD. I'm Terry Shepard, and this is Digital Justice. Robert, first question. What does LRAD stand for?
Long-Range Acoustic Device.
Robert Putnam with LRAD Corporation gives the lowdown on this piece of popular yet contentious technology.
With the long-range acoustic device systems, we're able to project voice messages and alarm tones up to distances over to 2 miles. It stays focused in a 30 to 60 degree beam, and by allowing us to do that, the people at the other end absolutely understand the instructions that are being given them, and we can give them the instructions in any language. We have a highly intelligible, very robust product now that's being sold throughout the world to militaries, commercial security, maritime security, and then also for wildlife protection and control. And for law enforcement, they appreciate having a device that really works for communication. Bullhorns just don't cut it. In large outdoor situations especially.
So how did this technology come about?
The genesis of LRAD really begins with the attack on the USS Cole in October of 2000. Here was a USS destroyer in a Yemeni port. They didn't know if it were fishermen or terrorists that were pulling alongside them until it was too late. They turned out to be terrorists, detonated, killed...
And we know what happened.
Yeah, we killed,
it was bad.
Killed many sailors, injured others, caused $1 billion of damage to the boat. And they had all this firepower on board, but they didn't know who these people were, so they couldn't take any action. Well, the whole point with LRAD is it fills a critical gap. How do we determine if they're friendlies or not, if they're not responding to radio calls?
And when I got in front of the device, I could immediately hear its effectiveness.
This is a test of the long-range acoustic device LRAD. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All right, guys, I have to say I'm a little worried walking up here like you're gonna sneak in and turn it back on. Scott, you were the operator on that one.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Right off the bat, first impression, I felt like there was a dude standing right here yelling in my ear, but it was really clear.
Here you have the back of the head unit where all the electronics are housed. You got the power switch you turn on. Power is activated by the control unit, which you have an on-off position.
Right.
This is a standard MP3 player, so you can put whatever test files, any kind of audio media on this MP3 player.
You will be given food, water, and medical attention.
Because it can broadcast effectively up to 2 miles away and very powerfully, you can mount that on helicopters, fly over and be able to broadcast messages to hopefully the people that you're trying to find. Cover a lot of area quickly rather than putting, in some cases, hundreds of people on the ground in the bushes trying to find people. And then for suicide situations from bridges or buildings, fire departments in high-rise situations.
Can also be used more in a bit of an offensive or a defensive manner. How does that work for that?
Well, I think you're referring to our alarm tone capability of this. course, that's what's gotten most of the interest from people out there on the other side. We really don't look at this as any kind of a weapon, non-lethal or otherwise.
And though reluctant to speak on camera, law enforcement officials stand behind LRAD.
The alarm tone is mostly used especially in law enforcement applications, especially when protests get out of control or you get large crowds. And with LRAD, that fills that critical gap between bullhorns and rubber bullets.
But many groups, including the ACLU, have issues with LRAD.
I think LRAD has no place at public events and forums, especially ones that any free speech expression activity is too intimidating, it's too scary, and so chills speech that we want to encourage in a democracy.
Are these machines causing any harmful side effects to the eardrums and the senses? Some would say it is possible that they are. So that would be considered torture.
My wife had one used on her in Oakland. It was like a kind of psychological torture. Like it's in your brain and you can't think, you can't move.
I'd rather be tased, shot with a rubber bullet, maced, and then kicked in the balls than have my eardrums erupted.
Like anything else, if it's too loud, like a fire siren or a police siren, you put your hands over your ears.
Right.
By doing that, it cuts 25 dB of sound pressure level instantly. You can still hear it, you can still understand it, but it's not going to hurt your hearing.
Right.
It's just a different thing to have this, magical voice being beamed at you or even bringing you down. Traditional public order policing has its value.
Well, I think you have some people out there, especially during protest situations, who view this as, hey, this is not allowing us to protest or do what we want. We know of one case in regards to the Pittsburgh G20 summit where LRAD was deployed.
By order of the City of Pittsburgh Chief Police, I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly.
And I think that was the first time that a police department had used LRAD in a high-profile event. And what they were interested in is keeping the property damage down and the number of arrests down. That's the bottom line of LRAD. It's the ability to use long-range, powerful, highly intelligible communication to resolve uncertain situations peacefully, to determine intent, and potentially save lives on both sides of the long-range acoustic device.
Guys, that was actually a great demo.
Thank you.
And maybe could I borrow this for a party? Come on. There you have it. In the eyes of law enforcement, LRAD is an effective tool that's use will certainly continue to spread. But in the eyes of others, it's a potential weapon just waiting to be abused. No matter the opinion, it looks like LRAD is here to stay. I'm Terry Shepard, and this has been Digital Justice.
You're not going to see it, you're not going to hear it, you're not going to smell it, you're going to feel it.
It felt like opening up an oven door, almost mixed with a sting from about my sternum to my neck. So you started really feeling it on my neck before I had to kind of instinctually jump out of the way.
Oh. Yeah. It still works the same way.
Picture like an invisible searchlight, right? You know what a searchlight looks like? So an invisible searchlight of radio waves going downrange. So it's this big when it starts, and at the end, it's the same size.
This is a military area. Move away from the perimeter. I say again, this is a military area. Move away from the perimeter.
There could be some perimeter incursions along an installation that you may have. There could be some crowd control where you're trying to make sure that you de-escalate the situation and kind of calm things down and break up these crowds before it gets out of control.
The 6th of April 1994. The Rwandan president is killed when his plane is shot down. With confusion over who's to blame and the government in disarray, the killing of Tutsis begins. 7th of April 1994. As UN peacekeepers stand aside, Rwandan soldiers and Hutu militia hunt for Tutsis. Some people are shot, but many more are killed with clubs, sticks and machetes. Radio broadcasts call for the extermination of Tutsi cockroaches. The 11th of April 1994. Tens of thousands of Tutsis and Hutu moderates have already been killed. UN troops under attack themselves withdraw to the airport. The civilians they had been sheltering are left to the Hutu mobs.
Of
course, this was all a covert operation. And what they had ready on the tarmac near the Hutu tribe were C-130 Hercules planes armed with microwaves that they beamed these microwaves over the Hutus and inflamed their anger, exacerbated an anger that was already there. So they thought this anger was their own, and they became raging murderers. We have the documents. We have Operation Crimson Mist.
They thought their anger was their own. We have the documents. Operation Crimson Mist. A huge massacre, ladies and gentlemen. We just heard about it as Tutsis and Hutus out there in Rwanda, but in fact there was so much more. How many people have heard of psychotronic weapons? How many people have heard of silent weapons, of synthetic telepathy, the Lily Wave? The list goes on. The idea of there being targeted individuals isn't somebody's imagination. This is well documented throughout history. Many MK Ultra programs centered around dosing people that weren't even aware so that they could record the outcome. And many people are suspecting that what's happening in the big cities right now is partly due to psychotronic weapons, where people are feeling anger and they just don't know where it's coming from. How many people have been to the big city? You might think it's just the traffic that's getting you road raged, but there could be something else. You can see an innocent little old lady all of a sudden turn into, batshit crazy due to road rage. Is it just the cars that are pissing her off, or is it something else? Ladies and gentlemen, I think people should be questioning the programming on television. It's not just like the fake news on CNN and NBC. It's the effect of watching people, turn into zombies as they watch TV. Their mouth opens wide, their eyes get all glossy, and it's just like they're hypnotized. What's going on with the television? Well, in fact, the frame rates are basically timed to mess with your head even more. So you've heard of like frame rates before. They've timed it all, and they're embedding all sorts of things into otherwise normal-looking commercial products to get you. They say, oh, well, the vaccines are just to, keep you from getting sick. In fact, the vaccines are the things that are making you sick. They say, oh, well, the fluoride is there to, make your teeth all white and better. But in fact, the fluoride is there to kill you. They say, oh, well, we're just spraying all of these pesticides on the food to keep the bugs off. Whoa, breaking news, you are the bugs. Here's another real interesting bit of information. We captured this footage, coming up here, of death towers in Skid Row over a year ago. And they were the first ones to get it in LA. Why do the people in Skid Row need 5G service? Do they look like the kind of people that are downloading a movie in a minute? They can't pay for a plan. They can't pay for rent. They're looking for crack. And in fact, they're the experiment. They're one of the, probably ground zeros of the New Age Tuskegee experiments happening right now. Don't think they stopped, way back in the day. They're continuing on with their experimentation. And, what's out there, what a product as commercially is something completely different in their minds. They're weapons in disguise. They've weaponized everything, the food, the air, the water, telecommunications, the television. It's all weaponized against you, against, the average person out there, to render them, to turn them into sheeple and to keep them there. Whether it be the schools, the television, the music, the movies, the food, it's all there to dumb you down. Even, some of the side effects, well-known side effects of 5G exposure, death ray exposures, cell tower exposures, is fatigue and, dementia-like symptoms. Forgetfulness, trouble concentrating. Now, you have to imagine that the central nervous system is, somewhat electric. To be quite honest with you, it works on electric potentials. And that's how, that's how come you can feel something, at your fingertips. It's electronics, biological electronics. In fact, the whole thing is real fascinating. You look at the DNA, it looks like a programming language. You look at the cells, they look like nanotechnology. What's going on in this world? Why are scientists saying that it looks like the Matrix out there? If you want to know more about intelligent design, check out the Bible. Quite literally, it's been telling you that for thousands of years, and now scientists are waking up to it. Check out the law of biogenesis. Tells you that life can only come from life. Now, here's an interesting view from a special camera that can see, EMF. So EMF is like light, except that it's at a different frequency. All of it, whether it be X-rays, gamma rays, microwaves, it's all electromagnetic frequencies.
So that pretty much wraps up this presentation on silent warfare. All that remains is to ask for you, if you have any thoughts or opinions on what you just saw, please leave them in the comments below. And until the next ship video production, take care and remember to be excellent to one another. See you soon, guys.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
Right, guys, welcome back to the studio. To those of you who did stick around to the very end of that presentation, and it is a lonely looking number 3 viewers, it's saying there, but if or not anyone is still watching, we will sort of wrap this up very, very shortly. But if any of you do have anything to say on what you just saw in that presentation, now would be the time to do so. But there was a lot contained in there that I feel people should be a little bit more aware of, and just sort of the capacity that some of these technology devices that we have in our homes and seem to sort of crave more as time goes by. What isn't electronic, what isn't smart these days? Refrigerators, microwaves, ovens, TVs, watches, you name it. All of these things emit frequencies. All of these things are either connected to us or within very, very close reach of our bodies at any given time. And the amount of this technology that is out there that is emitting a multitude of frequencies that are sort of saturating modern day society that cannot be seen, I'm sure as sure can be, is got to be affecting us, whether or not it does have the ability to implant voices into our mind or control us or manipulate our behaviors. We can only speculate. I can only assume, and I would like to think that quite possibly, that could explain an awful lot of what is going on in the world. But not only the sort of frequency sort of weapons that are hidden in everyday, convenient products or items, devices in the household. It's more the sort of manipulation of sort of things we see, things we hear, and things we interact with. And we sort of said in the chat, a couple of you did mention how AI is getting more and more increasingly smart, and how you sort of seem to make a comment on something, and then before you know it, your news feed is saturated on stuff that is very similar or identical to what you've just commented on or looked on. And I've noticed that incredibly on Twitter, especially. It does seem to be, you jump on or respond to a particular tweet or post, and the algorithm will then sort of force feed you as much as it can find is relevant to that. Useless Crayony, aka or formerly known as, or the viewer formerly known as Devil Speak, he was lagging behind a lot. I see, that is one of the sort of things with live streams. Sometimes people jump in at different points in time, or sometimes you have to refresh, and it may not always be as live as it is for everybody else, but I'm glad to see you, Devil Speak. It's hard to get used to calling you Useless Crayon Eater, but you know who I'm talking to, and it's also good to see Marduke, Break the Spell, Mr. McGee, and we have one other person, I'm not sure, but we got to, I think, the dizzy heights of 8 viewers at one point. We're dropped down to 3 now, and I'm almost certain that 2 of those are going to be my phone and computer that I'm keeping a track on things. So I am going to wrap it up, as there's not many people watching to interact with. Maybe I'll come and chat a little bit on Discord, or we'll have a little bit of a brainstorm perhaps over the next few days as to where I go next with Reality Decoded. As I said, I had a little bit of enthusiasm last weekend, and did have a sort of pretty decent stream last Saturday night, and I spent sort of a rainy couple of days getting back into the sort of habit in trying to enjoy editing, and you know, sort of doing the recording and producing these presentations for the few lonely souls that do tune in. But it seems the more I stream, the more I upload, the less and less people seem to catch the uploads or the live streams. And the time that I was less active, my channel was getting an awful lot more attention. So maybe that is sort of the way to sort of reverse the algorithm's action, is to not stream, which I think is probably what they want you to. But social media sort of platforms do depend on you using them. They do all they can to try and draw your attention. And something I notice is when, you know, perhaps I'm using Twitter, which is supposed to be real time and instant, sort of people responding and sort of seeing your tweets instantly, is when I'm sort of scrolling or I'm commenting or trying to chat with someone, the notifications don't seem to come through, which is something that doesn't happen on YouTube. No one ever seems to get notified when I'm uploaded or I'm going live until after the fact, when it's probably too late for a lot of people. But the minute I will put my phone down, the minute I will go out and start, excuse me, let me get a sip of water. But yeah, the minute I start doing something else and put my phone down and don't pay much attention, it's usually sort of a couple of minutes before it starts pinging and draws my attention. And our cellular devices have a hell of a lot of control over us these days, and you know, I hate to admit it still has a control over me. As much as I can resist it at times, it doesn't take an awful lot to sort of get into the familiarity of sort of staring endlessly at a screen, scrolling up and down, refresh, waiting for some sort of interaction to come in that won't come in unless you sort of put it down. But that was sort of something I found very sort of strange, that the less I use my YouTube channel, the more people seem to watch it. And in the last 12 months, the sort of the viewing figures between sort of regular and subscribed viewership, as opposed to sort of random newbies. The newbies are way out punching the regular offenders. So this channel has only ever got smaller, it's never ever got bigger, and it might almost be at the point in time that it might be an idea to put it out of its misery. And sort of part of what I'm up against, I guess, as a creator, and a little bit of a stubborn one that likes to sort of put together longer content than quite a lot of people. But you know, memes, shorts, TikTok videos, things that are sort of like 2 or 3 minutes long, that's all people have time for. And not even that, you know, I've even experimented myself by putting up a couple of videos that have been less than 2 minutes short, 2 minutes long, and people just ain't got patience to watch it or sit through it. So if you have had the patience to stick with this presentation till now, then you are a rare and a dying breed. So on that note, guys, I will get our little dancing girl into position and get her ready to dance us out. So I will, I come in. Everyone is invited to the party on the Freak Show Discord after the show. I could probably put the link in if anybody hasn't got the Discord link. But yeah, I got a few things to do, so it might not be much time I spend on Discord. I've got dogs to feed and walk, yada yada, woo-de-woo. There we go, invite. Sorry, I was trying to talk and realise what I'm doing. Copy link. Right. Here you go, there is the link if anybody wants it. maybe sometime, Devil, you could invite your buddies at the Freak Show to come and hang out with us. But we're down to 2 people watching now. So with that being said, guys, until next time, take care, be excellent to each other, and we may or may not see you soon in another live stream nobody's gonna watch. Till then, take care.